The 13th Doctor, who piloted the TARDIS from 2018 to 2022, represented the first time in Doctor Who's decades-long history that the character of the Doctor had been played by a woman. And when the show revealed in the 2022 New Year's special that the Doctor and her companion Yasmin Khan had romantic feelings for each other, 13 also became the first Doctor to have a same-sex romance on screen. 13 and Yaz's romance, or Thasmin, had been speculated about by some fans ever since 13's era first began. And at last, after 3 seasons, it was confirmed to be real. There's just one problem. Only 2 episodes later, the 13th Doctor regenerated into her next incarnation, and Yaz was written out of the show. The late introduction of the Thasmin storyline meant there wasn't much screen time for developing their romance further, and the lack of a proper payoff incensed a lot of fans, myself included. But was there actually a great story in there somewhere? My name is Ellie Blackwood. I'm a sci-fi and fantasy writer who loves overanalyzing Doctor Who. And today, we're going to break down the problems with Thasmin in the show, and speculate about what might have fixed them. While this is the first time I'm making a long-form YouTube video about the 13th Doctor, I'm well aware from my time making mini Doctor Who video essays on TikTok that discussions of this particular era of the show can get a little heated. There are some people who crap all over this era of the show because they're sexist and homophobic, and they don't like that we have a female Doctor who is attracted to women. However, there are genuine writing-related reasons to criticize this era of the show. I'll be getting into some of my own annoyances with this era in this video. But I hope to get across that my criticisms come from a place of love for the show, and a love of the 13th Doctor and Yaz's characters specifically. I'm really excited to discuss Thasmin with all of you, so be sure to leave all your thoughts in the comments. But please do keep it constructive. If you like video essays about books, TV, Doctor Who, and all that goodness, be sure to subscribe to my channel. And also be sure to subscribe to my free monthly newsletter to get updates on all my latest projects and content. You can find that linked in the description. Romance in Doctor Who is actually kind of a controversial subject, so before I go into my issues with the Thasmin storyline, I first want to set a baseline for what I think makes a good Doctor companion romance. In the classic iteration of Doctor Who that aired from 1963 to 1989, the Doctor wasn't really shown to be interested in romance at all. However, that changed with the 1996 Doctor Who TV movie, where the 8th Doctor had an on-screen romance with medical doctor Grace Holloway. When the show picked up again in 2005, the Doctor's relationship with his companion Rose Tyler turned overtly romantic by the revival's 2nd season, and pretty much every incarnation of the Doctor since then has at least displayed some inclination toward romance. This means that the Doctor's TARDIS companions can sometimes double as love interests. Some people love Doctor companion romances, while others hate the idea or even think the Doctor should never be romantic with anyone, companion or otherwise. Personally, I'm fine with Doctor companion romances, but it depends on the execution. Well-written romance storylines are of course centered around a relationship, but they are also deeply invested in the individual characters, and they use the romance as a vehicle for developing those characters in interesting ways. The Doctor's camaraderie with humans is really fun to see on screen, and functions as a way for the viewer to insert themselves into the adventure. But there is a dark side to being besties with, or even crushing on, an immortal Time Lord. Ever since the 2005 revival, the Doctor has been characterized by a deep sense of loneliness at having lost their connection to the rest of the Time Lords. So they tend to lean heavily on humans for companionship, and to avoid despair by watching humans react to the wonders of the universe. But as much as the Doctor relies on humans to keep from being lonely, there is a definite power imbalance in the Doctor's favor. The Doctor is hundreds to thousands of years old, meaning that the Doctor has a level of knowledge and experience that no human can match. The Doctor also has the ability to regenerate their body after being fatally wounded, whereas humans are one and done. Traveling the universe and saving the day comes with a much bigger risk for a human than it does for the Doctor. Even a simple friendship with the Doctor can be treacherous for a human, especially if they get too caught up in the adventure, but a romance comes with an extra level of vulnerability that can make things extremely dangerous. This isn't a problem for me as a viewer because I love it when the show acknowledges the danger of getting too close to the Doctor. I have a whole video essay about why the 10th Doctor and Rose's relationship is super unhealthy and why that makes me love watching it. Even the Doctor's romance with River Song, who has some Time Lord abilities and a much longer lifespan than most humans, involves a huge power imbalance for most of River's time on the show. Drop a comment if you want me to do a video essay about how River and the Doctor's relationship is super messed up. The thing is, I would argue that 13 and Yaz's relationship is also super messed up, and it would be so delicious if the show actually treated it that way. So now, let's get into an actual analysis of Thasmin to work out where things went wrong. While 13 and Yaz's romance was not planned by the showrunners initially, fan interest in Thasmin began almost as soon as the 13th Doctor appeared on our screens. In the modern day, it's pretty well established that the Doctor's sexuality can be fluid between incarnations. Most of the Doctor's on-screen romances have been with women, but the 14th and 15th Doctors were both attracted to men, and you can also read some bisexuality into the Doctor's earlier incarnations if you want to. But the fact is that back when 13 was cast, the Doctor had previously only shown overt romantic interest in women, and there was no reason that had to change just because the Doctor was regenerating into a woman. In late 2017, it was announced that Bradley Walsh, Tosin Cole, and Mandip Gill would be portraying the 13th Doctor's companions Graham, Ryan, and Yaz. Because Yaz was the only woman in the group, if the Doctor was going to have a romance with a female companion, then it had to be her. According to the fanlore wiki for Thasmin, the first fanfiction featuring the pairing was published in February 2018, 8 months before 13's first season even aired. Again, the showrunners were not deliberately setting up a Thasmin romance at first, and there's actually some thought that they might have been setting up a romance between Yaz and Ryan based on a brief exchange from episode 3.
Last time I sneaked into someone's room by a window was Danny Biswas in year 10.
Danny Biswas? He was punching well above his weight.
Did you just accidentally pay me a compliment?
Whatever.
This reference to Yaz sneaking into a boy's window has generally led fans to assume that Yaz is bisexual. Yaz first meets 13 while investigating a train crash, and Yaz, who works as a local police officer, initially tries to take charge of the situation. However, she folds to the Doctor's way of doing things quite quickly, and from then on in the show, she pretty much always goes along with whatever the Doctor says. In the first few episodes of 13's first season, her companions are along for the ride because of a TARDIS glitch and not because they actually wanted to be, but at the end of episode 4, they beg the Doctor to continue traveling with her. Graham is trying to escape his grief, Ryan is trying to escape his boring warehouse job, and Yaz is trying to get some breathing room from her family. Additionally, Yaz says, "I want more of the universe, more time with you. You're like the best person I've ever met." This kind of open adoration for the Doctor isn't difficult to retroactively view as budding romantic feelings from Yaz. In the same episode, there's also an interaction where Yaz's mum asks, "Are you two seeing each other?" The Doctor responds, "I don't think so. Are we?" And Yaz insists the two are just friends. This was probably intended as a throwaway gag at the time, but now it feels more like foreshadowing. Throughout Yaz's time on the show, there's a growing trend where she hero worships the Doctor, wanting nothing more than to be by her side throughout their adventures. However, in Series 12, the Doctor discovers that her home planet has been destroyed again, and starts questioning everything she ever knew about her people and her past. The details don't really matter because I don't like the Timeless Child arc, but the point is that the Doctor deals with her inner turmoil by becoming more withdrawn from her companions. All three of them remark on how the Doctor is becoming distant, but we can assume it weighs most heavily on Yaz. Indeed, when the Doctor is imprisoned and separated from her companions at the end of Series 12, it's Yaz who creates a giant conspiracy board trying to work out where the Doctor is, while Graham and Ryan encourage her to move on. In the Series 12 episode The Haunting of Villa Diodati, Claire Claremont laments to Yaz how the object of her affections, Lord Byron, keeps giving her confusing answers about his feelings for her, and they have this exchange.
His answers only increase the enigma.
I know someone like that.
This enigmatic person of yours, would you trade them for reliable and dull?
My person's a bit different.
This shows that Yaz is confused and frustrated by the Doctor's aloof nature and non-committal responses. Furthermore, given that Claire is talking about someone she has romantic feelings for, drawing a parallel to the Doctor in this way suggests that Yaz has romantic feelings for the Doctor too. Similarly, in the 2021 New Year's special Revolution of the Daleks, Captain Jack Harkness and Yaz have a conversation about how painful it can be to travel with the Doctor and then suddenly lose that. And given that Jack canonically had romantic feelings for the Doctor, this seems to be another hint that Yaz feels the same way about 13. Series 13, which aired in 2021, sees Ryan and Graham leave the TARDIS, giving Yaz more time in the spotlight, and I think it's pretty safe to say the writers were actively planning to make Thasmin canon by then. The term canon refers to something becoming properly confirmed in the official show, rather than just fan theory or speculation. The opening scene of that season sees Yaz and the Doctor flopping onto a mattress while handcuffed together after a high-speed chase. I mean, come on. After the revelations of the previous season, the Doctor is trying to uncover more about her own past, but she still doesn't tell Yaz what she's up to or the full story of what she learned. The first episode of Series 13 involves a deliciously tense exchange where Yaz calls the Doctor out for hiding stuff from her, and the Doctor gets defensive and a little manipulative while trying to brush her off. Despite this little disagreement, Yaz is still shown to be hopelessly devoted to the Doctor, which is made even more obvious by the absence of Ryan and Graham. I mean, new companion Dan Lewis is there too, but his only personality trait is being from Liverpool. In the episode Survivors of the Flux, the Doctor is imprisoned and separated from Yaz and Dan, who travel the world trying to get more information on how to stop the apocalyptic Flux event. During this time, Yaz is clearly pining for the Doctor, repeatedly watching back a video message that the Doctor gave her. At the end of the season, the Doctor apologizes to Yaz for shutting her out and promises to tell her everything. This shows that the Doctor is getting better at opening up and wants to be closer and more vulnerable with Yaz. Also in that final episode, the Doctor receives an ominous prophecy that indicates she's going to regenerate soon, which adds a new sort of tragedy to this romance that hasn't even started. But there are still 3 episodes of the 13th Doctor left, and now things are about to evolve from subtext into text. Thasmin as a romance officially became canon in the 2022 New Year's special Eve of the Daleks. This episode saw the Doctor, Yaz and Dan navigating a time loop in a creepy storage facility while being hunted by some angry Daleks. At one point, when the Doctor goes off to turn the lights back on, Dan asks Yaz about her feelings for the Doctor.
Have you ever told her?
Told her what?
How you feel about her?
I don't know what you mean.
Yeah, you do.
Is it that obvious?
Well, maybe not to a good-hearted weirdo.
I don't know what to do, Dan. I've never told anyone, not even myself.
There is so much interesting subtext in this scene. It's never confirmed whether Yaz has been attracted to women before the Doctor, but the line, "I've never told anyone, not even myself," could imply that this is the first time she's having to confront that she isn't straight. As scary as it is to admit your feelings for someone in the first place, Yaz's hesitation is compounded by the fact that the object of her affections is a woman, her best friend, and an immortal Time Lord. In the next time loop, when Yaz is off doing something else, Dan similarly nudges the Doctor about her feelings for Yaz.
She likes you.
I like her too.
No, I mean, she likes you.
I don't understand what you're saying, Dan.
I think you do. But for some reason, you pretend to me and to her that you don't.
The Doctor is hiding in the ambiguity of her and Yaz's friendship to avoid confronting her feelings, probably because she knows she's about to regenerate soon. And because the Doctor, in all their incarnations, loves running away from their feelings to avoid being vulnerable. So that's about all we get in Eve of the Daleks, but the next episode, the 2022 Easter special Legend of the Sea Devils, is the first time the Doctor and Yaz actually discuss their feelings with each other. The episode increasingly builds up to this conversation. When she takes Yaz to the bottom of the ocean, the Doctor remarks, "Not a bad date, am I?" And toward the end of the episode, while she's doing some technobabble stuff to try and save the day, the Doctor makes her confession to Yaz. You know what I said earlier about not being a bad date? Well, dates are not something I really do, you know? I mean, I used to, have done, and if I was going to, believe me, it'd be with you. I think you're one of the greatest people I've ever known, including my wife. The point is, if it was going to be anyone, it'd be you. But I can't, because at some point, time always runs out. This reference to the Doctor's wife is most likely referring to River's song. Now, my problem with Thasmin isn't that it took them so long to properly admit their feelings. The same thing happened with the 10th Doctor and Rose, who never verbalized their affection until they were forced apart, and even then, 10 got cut off before he could say how he really felt about Rose. Furthermore, 13 is characterized as someone who avoids complicated discussions because she doesn't want to open herself up to pain. So I buy that it took her a long time and some encouragement from Dan to finally admit how she feels. Later, on the beach, the Doctor tells Yaz,
I can't fix myself to anything, anywhere, or anyone. I've never been able to. That's what my life is. No, of course. Not because I don't want to. But if I do fix myself to somebody, I know, sooner or later, it'll hurt.
My nanny says, courage is knowing something will hurt and doing it anyway. Mind you, she also said it's the definition of stupidity.
Can we just live in the present of what we have while we still have it? Sure.
So this is a really heart-wrenching note for this relationship, especially given that we know the Doctor will regenerate in the next episode. The Doctor knows that she has no choice but to leave Yaz heartbroken. I don't know if she necessarily handles things with the most care for Yaz's feelings, because for all her insistence that she and Yaz can't be together, she doesn't really give Yaz the space to move on either. The stuff about can we just live in the present of what we have while we still have it kind of feels like she's inviting Yaz into a situationship that's going to hurt Yaz way more than it hurts the Doctor when it inevitably ends. But it feels pretty in character with 13's tendency to live in denial and pretend everything is fine rather than confronting her problems. It's a really thorny situation, and I'm sure 13 and Yaz's final episode will be packed full of tension, heartbreak, and an epic goodbye kiss, right? Right? Look, I actually really like 13's last episode, The Power of the Doctor, which was the BBC Centenary special. We get an amazing master performance, stunning visuals, plenty of fan service, and a pitch-perfect final line for 13. But if you hadn't seen Eve of the Daleks or Legend of the Sea Devils, you'd be forgiven for missing that 13 and Yaz have romantic feelings for each other at all, because it's literally never mentioned in this finale. Any hint of romance between them is entirely down to Jodie Whittaker and Mandip Gill's acting. We see Yaz going to great lengths to get her Doctor back when the Master takes over the Doctor's body, but I think pretty much any companion would do that, even if their feelings for the Doctor were purely platonic. And Yaz's grief over the Doctor being mortally wounded is, again, not out of the ordinary for any old companion. As the Doctor's regeneration approaches, there's a moment where Yaz and the Doctor are tenderly holding each other in the TARDIS, and I thought, oh my god, this is it, they're going to kiss. And then they just didn't. I can guarantee that if one of them was a man, they absolutely would have kissed in this moment. You cannot convince me otherwise. My friends and I were so incensed about this when the episode aired that I stayed up until 3 AM that night photoshopping a still of 13 and Yaz kissing to soothe our anger. To make matters worse, when the Doctor realizes she's about to regenerate, she doesn't even offer to keep Yaz on board the TARDIS afterwards, even though plenty of companions have stayed with the Doctor throughout multiple incarnations. Both 13 and Yaz seem to automatically assume that Yaz has to leave, but why? It would have been so easy to insert a brief line from Yaz saying it would be too painful for her to travel with a Doctor who wasn't her Doctor, or something like that. The omission would be a problem even if they were just friends, but given that these characters are supposed to be in love, it's even more glaring. Even worse, the last scene that Yaz and the Doctor share together is them sitting on the TARDIS roof eating ice cream, and the Doctor says, "It's been so special. You, and Graham, and Ryan, and Dan." Lumping Yaz in with all the other companions like that, as though 13 doesn't have a special affection for her, feels like an extra slap in the face. So that's how we left Thasmin, underdeveloped, unresolved, and relegated to a footnote in Doctor Who history. 3 years later, there was a brief scene in the finale for the 2025 season of Doctor Who where the 13th Doctor gets a cameo appearance due to some timey-wimey shenanigans, and she remarks to her 15th incarnation that she should tell Yaz she loves her. The 15th Doctor responds, "You never do, but she knows." But as much as I enjoy a crumb like this one, it doesn't make me any less mad about the way Thasmin was sidelined when the plotline had so much potential. While it would have been better for the writers to intentionally develop Thasmin from the beginning, I understand that sometimes TV shows change plans because writers get new ideas in later seasons. But I maintain that once the writers decided to commit to Thasmin, they could have done a better job at giving the story a decent payoff. Some people refer to Thasmin as queerbaiting, which I'm not sure necessarily applies here. Queerbaiting is a term for when a show teases a queer relationship without ever properly making it canon. It's a way of trying to have your cake and eat it too. You get to nurture a cult following among queer fans without facing any conservative backlash for actually writing a canon queer relationship. A notorious example of queerbaiting is the BBC Sherlock show that ran from 2010 to 2017, which frequently made jokes and teases about Sherlock and John Watson being in love love with each other, but it never actually came to pass. In Doctor Who, however, the teases about Thasmin were leading up to an actual canon romance. And while those hints may not have started off as intentional, it became pretty deliberate at least a season before Eve of the Daleks. So, in my opinion, Thasmin doesn't meet the technical definition of queerbaiting, but that doesn't mean the execution didn't suck. But with just a few changes, Thasmin could have been great. And I'm going to prove it right now. Alright friends, let's see if we can fix Thasmin. I'm going to stick to the two principles I outlined earlier about what makes a good Doctor-companion romance. It should use the romance as a vehicle for developing the characters in interesting ways, and it should engage with the fact that a human having a relationship with the Doctor is inherently kind of messed up. Part of the challenge here is that Yaz isn't a very well-defined character for most of her run on the show. A common criticism of the 13th Doctor's era is that the companions feel flat and underwritten. Ultimately, Yaz's main defining character trait is her committed devotion to the Doctor, and that's just not very interesting to me as the sole focus for a character. That means that as I outline my plan for a new and improved Thasmin, I'm going to be fleshing out a version of Yaz's character arc that isn't really present in the show. Even though the show mostly portrays Yaz as totally on board with whatever the Doctor wants, I really enjoy the little hints of conflict between them that we get, such as their first meeting on the train and the few scenes throughout the show where Yaz confronts the Doctor about hiding stuff from her. I love it when the Doctor's friends aren't afraid to call the Doctor out, which is why Donna Noble is my favourite companion, and it's something I always hope to see in a new companion. Belinda Chandra, my love, I will never forgive what they did to you last season. But that's a different video essay. Simply because of my own preference, I want to grow those seeds of conflict that we see between 13 and Yaz in the show into something that more centrally defines Thasmin. So let's begin. Let's say that Yaz has a strong sense of justice, but she's also prone to somewhat black and white thinking. Rather than acquiescing to the Doctor's way of doing things so quickly after their first meeting, Yaz continues to assert her own opinions, and tries to keep things in order in the face of the Doctor's more whimsical and chaotic leadership style. At first, she helps the Doctor out of necessity because she wants to keep her friends safe from alien threats. But she often questions the Doctor's decisions and becomes an active and engaged participant in strategizing how to defeat the villains, even though she doesn't always understand the strange alien happenings at first. As she embarks on her adventures in time and space, Yaz learns that the universe is bigger than she ever imagined, and develops a sense of deep awe and wonder for the endless possibilities out there. Being forced out of her comfort zone starts to make her more collaborative and less my way or the highway. When 13's companions make the decision to keep traveling with her in episode 4, I would have Yaz be less openly admiring of 13, none of this "you're the best person I've ever met" stuff. Instead, Yaz says she's coming along to keep Graham and Ryan safe, in keeping with her desire to protect her friends and her feeling that if she wants something done right, she's got to do it herself. But deep down, she really is developing an admiration for the woman who opened her up to the universe, even if she doesn't want to admit it. I think I would keep the line in episode 4 where Yaz's mum asks if she and the Doctor are dating, but I would have Yaz's reaction be a bit stronger, like, "Nuh-uh, her? No way!" Methinks the lady doth protest too much kind of thing. A common criticism of the 13th Doctor's era is that there are several episodes, including at least 3 instances that I can think of in her first season alone, where the Doctor makes kind of a morally dubious decision and nobody pushes back on it. Her companions all just go along with whatever she says, and the show treats the Doctor as always right. But if Yaz were to take more of an assertive role, she could raise some genuinely good points about, say, the best way to humanely euthanize the giant spider in episode 4, or how to hold the Kerblam megacorporation's feet to the fire about their workers' rights violations in episode 7. Even though she would enjoy being right, as most of us do, Yaz would also be extra eager to make the Doctor see her side because she craves validation from the Doctor. And then she might experience some confusion of, why do I care about the Doctor's opinion so much? The answer is because she's starting to fall for her and doesn't want to admit it. On the other side of the equation, the 13th Doctor is similar to the 11th Doctor in the sense that she's kind of hyperactive and wants to be friends with everyone. So when faced with Yaz's initial skepticism, 13 would want to work harder to make Yaz like her because she wants everyone to like her. 13 would quickly realize that Yaz has some really great ideas and helps make her plans more effective, so the Doctor would come to appreciate Yaz's contributions and admire her courage and intelligence. The Doctor would also be delighted to see Yaz's blossoming awe for the universe. By the end of 13's first season, the Doctor and Yaz would be firm friends. Their willingness to collaborate and bounce ideas off each other makes them a great team for saving the day, and they admire each other deeply. Their friendship is all the stronger because both of them had to work for it. We also start to see some little hints of their romantic attraction to each other. Nothing super overt yet, but a lingering glance here and a hand brush there. Something with plausible deniability, because neither of them are ready to admit to themselves or to each other that they feel this way. And then, at the beginning of the next season, the Doctor finds out about the Gallifrey stuff and retreats back into her shell. Yaz is confused and hurt by this, and worries about why the Doctor has become so withdrawn. Why won't 13 tell her anything? Could it be because Yaz did something wrong? We see during this season that Yaz, like so many other companions, has poured too much of herself and her self-worth into her adventures with the Doctor. When things are going great and she's fighting by the Doctor's side, it's exhilarating, but when the Doctor's shutting her out, it's devastating. The episode Can You Hear Me, in which the characters face their nightmares, could be a great opportunity for Yaz to confront this. The actual episode involves flashbacks to Yaz running away as a teenager due to being bullied in school. I like keeping this backstory of Yaz's mental health struggles because it provides good context for why she would want to help people and stand up for the little guy. But these dream sequences could be a place to have her modern-day struggles bleed in as well, perhaps with a voice taunting, "If you were good enough, the Doctor wouldn't be keeping things from you," or something like that. That episode would help Yaz remember that she doesn't have to deal with things alone, and she can reach out to her friends for help. She could talk to Ryan and Graham about her feelings of inadequacy and get reassurance that the Doctor's distance isn't her fault. This experience would give Yaz the courage to stand up to the Doctor and confront her about being secretive, like she does in the real show at the start of Series 13. I like the idea of Dan being the first to get Yaz and 13 to admit they have feelings for each other, because I think 13 is too avoidant and Yaz is too scared of rejection to make a move on their own. So I would keep the exchanges from Eve of the Daleks, but I would put them somewhere in the middle of Series 13, after Yaz and Dan reunite with the Doctor following their world-traveling adventures. With Dan having worked out their secret, Yaz and the Doctor get a little more bold with their flirtations, perhaps including the Doctor's "not a bad date, am I?" line that was originally in Legend of the Sea Devils. Maybe in the Series 13 finale, the Doctor has just about gotten up the nerve to admit to Yaz how she feels, so she goes, "Yaz, there's something I have to tell you." And Yaz, barely daring to hope, is like, "What? What?" And then something blows up or something, so the Doctor doesn't have time to say it. Very Ten and Rose core, if you get me. But before 13 can get back to Yaz and finish her thought, 13 gets the prophecy about her regeneration. Now the conflict is there. Should she tell Yaz about her feelings, or should she not, knowing that she's going to change soon? When Yaz follows up later, like, "So what was it you wanted to tell me, Doctor?" 13 opens up about the timeless child stuff instead. Which Yaz is relieved by because the Doctor is letting her in a little bit more, but it's still not the confession of love she was hoping for. But in Legend of the Sea Devils, she finally works up the courage to confess her feelings and tell Yaz about the regeneration prophecy, like in the canon show. I don't know that I would change a whole lot about the Doctor's confession, or the scene on the beach where the Doctor and Yaz discuss how they like each other but can't be together because the Doctor will change soon. The Doctor can't properly be with a human, so the problem was never that 13 and Yaz never got to retire to a cottage and live happily ever after. But with the extra development and focus on the dynamic between Yaz and the Doctor, these scenes would take on a deeper and more heart-wrenching meaning. Both of them are wrestling with pride and codependence and the impending grief of the Doctor's regeneration that could tear them apart forever. And now we get to Power of the Doctor. There are some good seeds in the original version, like Whittaker and Gil's emotional performances and Yaz's implied jealousy at meeting the Doctor's old companions. But we really need to bring it home and dial up the angst to the maximum. When the Master takes over the Doctor's body, I could definitely see him taunting Yaz a lot more about how he's taken away the Doctor she loves, and how she could never properly be with the Doctor anyway because humans are like mayflies compared to Time Lords, etc. And Yaz would be like, "I know the Doctor can never really be mine, but I'm going to fight to get her back anyway, because that's what you don't understand about love. It's not a transaction, it's a promise you keep, no matter what." Or something corny like that. Look, Doctor Who is a corny show, and you need to have corny lines at emotional moments. And of course, when 13 starts regenerating, I'd make them have an actual conversation about it. The Doctor would tell Yaz that she's about to change and she doesn't quite know what her new incarnation will be like, and it's completely Yaz's decision whether to stick around. And Yaz decides to leave because she fell for 13 specifically, and it wouldn't be the same. There would also be an element where Yaz was freaked out at seeing the Doctor regenerate into the Master earlier in the episode, which reinforces the fear that the person who comes out the other side of the regeneration wouldn't be the Doctor she loves. Furthermore, Yaz has realized how skewed their power dynamic is, and she wants to stop trying to kid herself that she could ever have a stable, lasting relationship with an immortal Time Lord. In the original episode, the Doctor insists upon regenerating alone for no apparent reason, but here it would be because she doesn't want to see the look on Yaz's face when she turns into someone else. But before Yaz leaves, I would make them kiss! Maybe I'd do one of those bits where Yaz is walking forlornly out of the TARDIS and then she turns around and runs back to the Doctor for their first and last kiss ever. And after Yaz leaves the TARDIS, I would show her actively joining UNIT or becoming a private alien hunting detective or something. Some way of applying her skills and her desire to help people that doesn't require being in a situationship with an immortal alien. So that's the plan I came up with for fixing Thasmin. But I'm just one random writer spitballing on the internet, so I really want to hear from you. What did you think of Thasmin in the show? Do you like my alternate arc for their relationship, or do you have different ideas for making it better? Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments, because I'm super excited to discuss. Subscribe to my channel for more video essays like this one, and remember to subscribe to my monthly newsletter to make sure you never miss any of my hot takes. The link to that is in the description. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.